In Damascus, Tuesday morning was quiet, as if the city had taken a breath of silence before the storm. Mahmoud, a young Syrian journalist, sat in a small cafe in the Al-Muhajirin neighborhood, sipping his bitter coffee and scrolling through the news on his old phone. Despite everything Damascus had witnessed in the past decade, there was something different about this day. A small headline at the bottom of the screen caught his attention. Massive explosion targets U.S. base in Iraq. Confirmed casualties. He looked up, gazing at the street. Cars moved slowly, and people seemed preoccupied with their daily worries. But in his chest, a sense of unease stirred as if an inner voice whispered, "This isn't just another strike. This is a spark." A few hours later, the official U.S. statement was released. Iran-backed militias are responsible for the attack. We will respond at the time and place of our choosing. That same evening, another explosion rocked the region, this time in Isfahan, Iran. A U.S. airstrike hit a facility suspected to be linked to Iran's nuclear program. Leaked videos showed red flames lighting up the sky, ambulance sirens screaming through the darkness. The next morning, Iran issued an official statement. This aggression will not go unanswered. The war has begun. This wasn't a typical political declaration. It marked the collapse of the fragile balance in the Middle East. Within less than 24 hours, the fronts were ablaze. In Baghdad, a senior commander of the Popular Mobilization Forces was assassinated. In Beirut, Hezbollah leaders were called to an emergency meeting in the southern suburbs. In Yemen, the Houthis escalated their missile attacks on Saudi Arabia. In Bahrain and Kuwait, extraordinary security measures were imposed. This time was different. Everyone responded simultaneously. Borders no longer separated allies from enemies, they dissolved. That night, Mahmoud wrote a short post on his personal page. The Middle East is not experiencing a new war. It's entering the end of the world we knew. The following morning, a U.S. aircraft carrier left port in Bahrain, escorted by F-35 fighters. Meanwhile, Iranian ballistic missiles were launched from various locations toward American bases in Iraq. Qatar and the U.S. missile, unexpectedly, struck near Al Udeid base in Qatar, killing dozens of U.S. soldiers. The American response was immediate. Dozens of airstrikes targeted IRGC bases in Tehran, Tabriz, and Shiraz. This media outlets began openly discussing the possibility of a limited tactical nuclear strike if Iran didn't act down. Events unfolded at breakneck speed, as if the world was racing toward its own demise. Israel joined the fray, targeting military convoys in southern Syria. Damascus airport was hit hard. In southern Lebanon, a full state of war was declared for the first time since 2006. In Jordan, waves of refugees began arriving from Syria and Iraq. In Egypt, a partial curfew was imposed in some provinces, amid rumors of military mobilization near the borders with Libya and Gaza. Turkey closed its airspace to U.S. aircraft, triggering a diplomatic crisis with Washington. Meanwhile, massive fires erupted in key oil facilities in the Gulf. The Houthis hit Aramco again, causing a collapse in oil prices and an unprecedented rise in food and medicine costs around the world. The world had become a shattered mirror. Russia and China publicly backed Iran, declaring, "We will not allow another Iraq scenario." Europe was divided. Germany, Britain, and France declared neutrality, while Poland and Latvia sided with the U.S. In the midst of this chaos, there was no time for analysis. Millions in major cities began crowding gas stations, ATMs, and grocery stores. The internet slowed to a crawl. Information was scarce, rumors outpaced facts. In Tehran, the streets were lifeless. In Baghdad, the green zone became a war front. In Beirut, the power grid collapsed. In Tel Aviv, residents hid in shelters as dozens of rockets fell from southern Lebanon, Gaza, and Syria. Damascus became a ghost town. Mahmoud turned off his phone, grabbed his notebook, and stepped into the street to document the moment. He wrote, "We are not merely living through World War III. We are witnessing the end of the old Middle East." On the fifth day, the unimaginable happened. Iran announced it had tested a limited nuclear warhead, releasing alleged photos of the explosion in a remote desert near Zahedan. No independent source confirmed the event, but the news spread like wildfire. The next day, a cruise missile struck the U.S. Embassy building in Kuwait. The U.S. response was shocking. A tactical nuclear bomb hit a military facility near Avaz. The world was stunned, markets crashed. Countries closed their borders. The United Nations declared a global emergency. The wave of panic that engulfed the planet was worse than COVID. In New York, people rushed to buy gas masks. In Tokyo, metro stations filled with citizens seeking shelter. In Cairo, schools were canceled and a state of emergency was declared. As for the Middle East, it had entered a tunnel with no exit. Water was cut off in Damascus, electricity in Beirut, and internet in Baghdad. Newspapers ceased publication. News channels broadcast old footage because even the reporters didn't know what was happening anymore. Side wars erupted: Saudi Arabia versus the Houthis, Turkey versus Kurdish militias. Egypt monitored the situation in Gaza and Sinai. Every country was on high alert. Then came the moment that froze the world. Satellite images showed a Russian nuclear submarine moving near the Gulf. The U.S. warned that any direct Russian involvement would be met with total retaliation. China issued its own warning, speaking of an existential war, and launched maneuvers near Taiwan. At that moment, no one knew if the world was heading toward its end. On the 10th day, an emergency meeting was held at the UN Security Council. For the first time, the idea of temporarily dividing spheres of influence in the Middle East between global powers was proposed to stop the escalation. Washington and Moscow agreed to freeze open operations on the condition that Iranian forces withdraw from Syria and Iraq. In exchange for partial lifting of sanctions on Tehran, it wasn't an agreement, it was a truce of fear. By the third week, Mahmoud returned to his old cafe in Damascus. He sat on the same chair and wrote in his notebook with slanted letters. "The Middle East has changed. It's no longer what it was. We are no longer who we were. We now live in a time beyond truth, beyond the state, beyond safety." He looked up at the gray sky, breathed slowly, and wrote, "Perhaps the war hasn't ended, but it has changed us forever." If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave me a comment with your ideas for the next one. And give it a like if you like the content. See you in the next video. Goodbye.